All right, new episode of Jung Naiv. I have a new guest. Who are you?
Well, my name is Weiwei, and Weiwei is my first name.
Weiwei is your first name?
Yes.
How are you, Weiwei? What do you do in Berlin?
I have nothing to do, actually. I do have something I have to cope with, but at the same time, I feel I have nothing to do.
How come?
How come? Because I'm living in such a condition. It's a location I'm not really choosing to, because I'm like a nomad person, traveling all the time, and my destination always have a certain kind of purpose, but those purpose is not really exactly what I want to, like exhibition or conversation or interviews. I just try to cope with it.
Can you cope with it? Is it easier to...
It's easy to cope with it as long as you still wake up next morning.
Well, hopefully. Why do you always travel? I mean, do you live in hotels? Do you have a place by yourself?
Since I was born, my father was exiled, so I never have a place I can call it a home, because the home at least offers you certain kind of security or safetyness or something you're familiar with or you can rely to. But my situation is my father was in exile, and we can be moved in any location or being fixed in any location. And then later I was in the United States for 12 years, which I never feel a sense of belonging. And I went back to China and become a guest of my own country, but I started to I think the internet is only thing I'm a little bit familiar with. The rest of it, those physical conditions, I'm not very familiar with. I'm Chinese, I speak Chinese, I love Chinese food. Besides that, I don't have much attachment to that land. My mom is 93, and she is... just a few minutes ago, she expressed her feeling to say, you should come back. You should bring back whatever you have there, and this is the land you should stay. So I said, yes, I will try to do that.
How?
Well, I think today if we do anything, we have to cut off our past. And we have to cut off our memory. And we have to be like every day you wake up, it's like a new person. You have to say, I appreciate today's temperature, even sunshine or raining or coldness or warmness. Still, we have to appreciate to be alive.
That sounds easy.
Easy, so far easy for me, but not so easy for many people. You know, many people may never wake up.
Why?
Different reasons. Getting old, sickness, and in the war, or in some destination designed by other people. And there's no way they can overcome.
But like in my experience, like the older I get, the more I feel that, my soul wants to be free. You see, the restrictions of so-called freedom in your country, where you live, where you among your peers, and my soul strives to be free and wants to have freedom for other people as well. Don't you think it's possible for others as well?
I think it's questionable, and the concept of freedom, also to be free, it's empty words. So people use that often. But what does that mean to be free? And free from what? And so when you talk about soul, what is the soul? So those has to be have a clear definition.
Let me offer my definition. My soul tells me I want to be free from domination. I want to live in a society or in a world where there's no domination, absence of domination, freedom as non-domination.
Well, that's only part of a freedom about so-called domination, but the domination can be also by the idea of no domination.
Really? How?
Of course, because we have a body, our understanding of ourselves can be completely, I would say, misleading. So how do you understand who is myself and why I don't want to be dominated and in what sense? So what we would think is domination. Of course, you can say, this domination of authority, someone tell you what to do, or, or domination of censorship, or to tell you what not to speak of. Those are easy to understand. But this is much profound domination, even by the idea of freedom. And the idea of non-domination still can dominate a lot of people's thinking and behaving.
What's your understanding of freedom?
Freedom, for me, there's never have absolute freedom. Freedom means struggle. Freedom means overcome the difficulties. So first we have to recognize what is the struggle.
Yes.
Then we understand why we have to against the tide to achieve something. What does that mean? To fight for freedom or to achieve certain kind of freedom, what does that mean to you?
I think it means struggle for my own self, but also struggle for others who are maybe unwilling or unable to struggle.
Yeah, but it has to be very special, very, not just special, but very particular sense, because only that sensitivity relate to you, then that would be the meaning of your freedom. And your freedom normally has a character really relate to your personal inner conditions. Of course, it can be reflected by the others, but still could be there's general so-called freedom, which normally we talked about. But even to achieve those general freedom, still, are we going to be free? I don't think so. I think the human can never be really free, because human as a species exists in the world is only because we are capable in challenge our conditions and struggle to achieve some kind of momentary joyfulness or a satisfaction.
What do you think the Western societies? I mean, you lived in Germany, you lived in the US, you live in Portugal now, I think.
No, I live in hotels, airports, and traveling between different studios. I don't.
But you know a lot of Westerners. What do you think we don't realize that we are struggling with? I mean, we always think of, dictatorships in China and other countries. Oh my God, they are not free and they don't live in a free society. What do you think we don't see, like, as a whole? What?
I think if we generalize the Western generally speaking, the West, we're talking about a society which basically is the character is about capitalism. And of course, you have a different capitalism. Some capitalism have a socialism attached to it.
Sure.
And but if we talk about fundamentally, it's about encouraging the so-called individual freedom, but at the same time, competition. I think the hidden words is competition. Then you are encouraging domination of the after competition. There's always domination there, and that's really being protected and to be encouraged. So you have a society mainly trying to establish some kind of so-called democratic, but never democratic, but also freedom of speech, which is not true. We all know there's no real freedom of speech. Any message has to be censored, or otherwise, if it's not censored, it's not going to be even exposed, and also nobody is going to listen to it because everybody have a self-censorship. So we are living in a hypocritic society, trying to have some kind of fake understanding about what kind of elite life we have compared to those societies like authoritarian society or less developed society. But what we should also understanding, even in every society, you can achieve some personal freedom. Mm-hmm. Those personal freedom, which can be equally precious and can be meaningful. So there's no privilege or no some kind of to say one is higher than the others. It's really about the individual's consciousness, judgment, and how much space you get from your own struggle.
Why is there no freedom of speech? Why is there no true freedom of speech? Why do we censor ourselves? Why like when we talk here publicly, why do we speak differently than when it wouldn't be public?
Well, the media are basically owned by powerful agents, companies or even by the public, which is mainly has been dominated by propaganda or some kind of fixed ideology. So we are dealing with a situation which the living environment in our mind, our thinking conditions, if we don't follow the censorship, or if we don't do the self-censor, we certainly cannot survive. There's not enough oxygen or water or right temperature to encourage freedom of speech. And of course, in many cases can be devastating because you have a different opinion, a different voice, a different attitude. That can be devastating. And that being proved in any society, communist, capitalist, or democracy, or authoritarian society, is exactly the same. Why is exactly people say, oh, we can see whatever we want to see? I said only because whatever you said is not relevant. Nobody cares what you says. But even in China, I make a little noise, people get nervous because my voice can be heard. So, today...
They're nervous because you say relevant
my voice
things?
can be heard, can be amplified because nobody talks that way. But here, seems everybody think, oh, we can talk this way and that way, nobody cares. Yes, because your voice is not unique enough. You never touch the sensitive part, and which make people feel uncomfortable. The capitalism is based on the comfort, also based on self-satisfaction, based on self-indulgent.
The thing is, I mean, you talked about capitalism earlier, and for like 40, 50 years now in our societies here is what we call neoliberalism. It's a sense of, okay, it's all that really matters is your individuality. What your life is about, making money, getting ahead of other people, being an unique individual. You're saying, on the other hand, nobody cares what you say because you don't have anything unique to say. How does it work together?
I think you're just like a fish in a fish tank, comfortable, good temperature, good lighting, people feed you well, and you have comfortable life. You think your movement are graceful, and you are being appreciated by another fish, and but that is very small fish tank. It's not real life. You're living under some kind of conditions, like in the greenhouse. You don't have a storm, you don't have the wind, you don't have the more difficult temperature. So if you call that life is real, which congratulations, for me that's not real life. It's just being conditioned in a situation which can comfort you. It's like someone doing massage to you, and you think that is real life. Okay, so
how much is comforting ourselves, making ourselves comfortable, and how much is our surroundings, the society, government, laws? How much are they trying to comfort us in not being or not having a unique voice, of not speaking up, of living in the tank?
Well, I think government is not. I don't think government have bad intentions. They have a great intention for themselves. So how do they govern? Is they supported by the powerful companies, the people who has a lot of strong interests in business. It's about competition of struggle of life. So they are products of the powerful people. Of course, that's more reliable to be part of the poor people. So obviously, any government, any power, if they want to maintain the power, or they really want to governing people, they're part of the real big establishment. That establishment can be hidden or can be open, but still nobody can escape that. It's not possible.
How did you manage to have a unique voice? Do you think you have a unique voice? Do you think you have relevant things to say?
I never think that way. I just try to be honest. That's a quality I don't want to lose. I don't want to look at the mirror to say, today I said something I really don't want to say. So to be honest doesn't mean your message is right, because you're also conditioned from your knowledge, your judgment, your philosophical view about the world. But the minimum thing you can do is to be honest, because otherwise you lose yourself and you become something you cannot recognize. That's the big tragic thing for life, if you cannot recognize yourself.
How can you tell that you're being honest? How can you feel that what you say is honest, what you think is honest?
I think the honesty is you pay price, because honesty requires you have a rationality, searching for truth, and trying to be part of the reality, which very often is very harsh, So that means you can hurt yourself for being honest, because people avoid to be honest because they don't want to hurt themselves. For human judgment, there's always a reason behind any argument. So when people have a choice, you can clearly say what is a clear reason they are taking. And then you can easily tell which is honest or not.
Both of us are speaking in our at least second language. Your first language is Mandarin, I guess, Chinese. My language is German. We have to talk to each other in English right now. How much of the way you think can you translate into the English language when I ask you a question? And how difficult or how frustrating is it not to be able to speak in your native language and express your thoughts or your answers better?
It's totally frustrating only because you're chained to yourself when you're dancing. But still, that performance gives a special meaning. A chained person dancing can be also impressive. So I'm a person has been chained and dancing still on stage. And I don't enjoy that, but still it offers special meaning. So I think sometimes to be using second language give you an opportunity to stay with the very essential concept. And also sometimes by choosing wrong words or not proper words, give you language a more poetic quality. Because you don't mean exactly that. That's a poetry.
When did you learn English?
I learned in California in a language school.
How easy was it?
It was pretty easy because, as for beginnings, it's so much fun. But I never developed it because to really understand the language, you really need to do a lot of reading and writing. I don't do any reading and writing. I'm just street language talk.
When you read every day, you read in your native language?
I don't read even in my native language.
Do you read at all?
Almost not.
Why?
because I grew up in Cultural Revolution. That time, most books are forbidden. And I hope my father burned his collection of books. He's a literature man. He's most well-known poet. So I hope to burn it because that brings him all the trouble. And so why I think will be fortunate if you start to read when you're young, but I read some basic books, basic literature, or very few, but still affect me. I always wondering if I read too much will be benefits or will be disadvantage, because I think for human consciousness, you only need to read very little. Then you already get the key. Then you can open the door.
Why?
Because you only need a key to open the door. You don't have to take down the wall or taking down the door. You just need a key.
The difficulty is to find the key, or to realize that you have the key. Right?
Yeah, sometimes it's wrong key, but
wrong key.
Yeah, but I know how to fix the door. The lock. From very young, I know how to open a lock.
Have you ever tried to learn the German language? Like
not our words, because I can see my imperfection in my native language, and I can see how badly I use English, so I don't want to learn another language.
Because like when I talk to foreigners and people who like to think, they always are envious of being able to speak the German language, because like from a philosophical and historical perspective, it seems that a lot of German thinkers had an advantage of thinking, because German language is very logical and
I don't think that way.
No,
I think any logic cannot be under the common simplest expression. So I just guessing if anybody thinks they are very logical, that's a cage. They put their thinking into a cage. They're being transformed into some kind of devastating situation. We don't have to be so so-called logical to make a right judgment. If all those logic only leading us to a strange place, we better just drop it,
I learned that most of the time we make decisions before we realize them, and then after we made the decision, we rationalize it in our head. Do you think that's true?
I think
talking about free will and all this.
I think people always think you make a right decision or you make a wrong decision. I never really think that way. I think you make a decision first, then you find out later. And the meaning of making a decision is only come out when you how to exercise your act. If you exercise your act honestly, you will get lessons from it, and that's more important than the decision itself.
What's the language you are thinking in? When you by yourself, when you think, is
strangely enough, when you say that, I use English, but if I don't talk with you on this kind of topic, I'm not so sure because I don't think that much.
You don't even think that much?
I don't even think that much.
How do you do that? You don't read
in language.
You don't think
language is really pretty bad at jacket. You don't have to be jacket. You can be nude. You can use your emotions, feelings, and which is no language can really carry that, because all the language are so cheap and so shallow and so. No, I think language is pretty bad. Some human have, but because we communicate, we use that. But yes, you build a bridge to cross river. Language is more like that. But you can swim to across river.
Yeah.
So then when you swim, you don't even need the language.
But we need it when we talk to each other. I want to understand you.
Yeah, that's why we have this kind of very shallow and necessary communication, because whenever we try to transform our feelings or judgment, we choose in those words which can be very misleading.
I was asking what language you're thinking in, because you were in jail. Mm-hmm. Your government put you in jail for 81 days, right?
Not really jail, in some kind of secret detention.
Okay, like it's called secret detention. You were isolated, permanently being watched by at least 2 guards, if I remember correctly.
Yes, permanent. Constantly.
And I figure all you could do most of the time is stay silent, be with yourself. And I was wondering, like, for so many days, 81 days, what do you think about?
First, I think humans have the desire to make sense of time. So you cannot just stay empty. It's impossible. You have to look at those guys who standing there, but they are pretty empty. They're 19, 20 years old young soldier. You immediately know what they are worried about. They're waiting for the lunch, or they are, after the shifting, they have to go to exercise, or they have to, the kind of soldier or military type of thing, which is pretty boring and simple. And being a soldier, that means you are not encouraged to have any freedom of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that the people training them said has to make them extremely tired, all the time occupied, because the only way to do that is to make them not to think that much. So they have to only sleep like 4 hours a day. The other side time is all training and also being guard me and just standing still and with their mind empty. They don't even know who I am, and they cannot ask any question.
They were not allowed to talk to you?
No,
Only
duty they have is trying to protect me from get hurt or suicide or whatever, or not falling down. And they have to report every second to their authority how I behaves. So I think that the slavery or domination of a human mind is the interesting tactics to really make a human as a tool. Then that tool can help the authority to achieve whatever they want to.
What did you learn about yourself in isolation? Was there anything new you learned?
Nothing new. I realized without communication, you're not even human, because you don't know if anybody care about you when you're in that condition. And if they care about you, can they do something to really rescue you or to help you out? You doubt, because it's very hard to have a trust on society. And of course, later when I'm out, I know so many people made effort to cry out, to ask the government to release me. Of course, I'm fully grateful for that. But when you're in that condition, you try to minimize that kind of thinking, you will see you're just alone and your life only based on your heart still bumping and still you can still have a deep breath. But then you don't have anything, you know.
Don't you have like a gut feeling that people care, that people are on the outside helping you, or
no, I don't have that. I was wrong, but still I don't have that because I had an experience when my father was being punished for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Nobody can help him. He's cleaning the public toilet, and nobody even can help him for one moment. People avoid even to talk to him. You know, humanity can go very low. And yeah, that's my early education.
How much was your father an influence in your thinking, in your philosophy?
My father never tried to influence me because he cannot even cope with the situation to stay alive. Oh. So he's really in the very bad shape. And also with certain kind of condition, you cannot give meaningful lessons because everything is so irrational. The whole society is irrational. So whatever you teach your children could be devastating because how do you deal with irrational play? So basically, I never had a real education from my father or family. Mm. But still, my father's behaving teach me a lot. He's an honest man. He trying to do his job, you know, clean the toilet precisely and trying to make the place clean. And he worked hard. Even he never really worked in his whole life. But he said, you know, nobody cleaned my toilet. I don't even know who cleaned them. Now I clean for them. What's wrong with that? So he make a perfect reasoning or argument. I respect him for being such a big heart. He never cried for this unfair treatment. People would cry that all the time. I never hear he had a moment feel that is unjust. I think it's pretty interesting.
What about your mother?
My mother is a very nice housewife, taking care of her children, wash their clothes, and trying to cook eatable food because we don't have much. So without my mom, the family disappeared a long time ago. I think I will be disappeared a long time ago. So,
how is she doing in China? She lives in China, right?
She lives in China. She's 93. She is, how do you say? Still have a very...
Does she have to work? Or is she like a senior? No. Does she get money and she can do whatever she wants?
No, she's kind of like a retirement. Mm-hmm. She 93. She don't have to work a long time ago. But, yeah.
Like you're a successful artist. I guess, when people think, oh my God, Weiwei must be rich, are you able to support your mother? Can you could you send her money?
I can if I want to, but she is pretty self-sufficient. She got her retirement money, and my brother, sisters there. Of course, if they need money, all my money can be theirs. But seems they all proud person, and they don't need extra money.
Do you care about money?
Do I care?
Do you care about money?
If I have to name something I care less, money would be on the top list. I don't care about money. I think money means nothing. When you surviving, when I was in New York, of course, I make money to pay the rent. Otherwise, I will be homeless. But besides pay the rent and the food, I don't want to make extra bucks because I don't need that money. I think money only has meaning when you use it. And I don't find a right way to use money, then the money is useless. It's just no value. The value is come from how you use it, right? If you have $100 or you have 1 million, I think the $100 may be worth more than 1 million because you need the $100 to buy food or to. But you have 1 million, how much can you use? You use maybe a very small percentage, or a billionaire. I think the poorest person is the billionaire, and because they only use very little portion.
I was gonna ask. We talked about capitalism. It seems to be that in capitalism, all that actually matters is making more money, accumulating even more money, instead of knowing what you use with it.
I think that's a sickness to educate people. When you have more money, you're more secured, you have a more luxurious life, or you gain more admiration. I think that's totally sickness, because certainly you don't get anything better than when you do not have that much money. It's just everything lost meaning because you don't struggle for that anymore. Then, say, if you can have all the money in the world, what are you going to do?
Making even more.
Yeah, but that means abstract. If you have all, there's no more or less. There's just has this meaning of the usage. You don't use money, then dismeaning yourself. Then I think it's pretty pitiful.
How sick is the Chinese society? I mean, the ruling party is communist. It's communist in name.
They are not really communist. They don't follow the communist principle. In many ways, they call themselves communist, but it's not real communist.
But I mean, when you go to school in China and you learn about communism and the ideas of communism, don't Chinese people, young people, everyday people, realize that this is not a communist society?
Everybody understands it's not communist society. They are no different from capitalism society today, except that they are state capitalism. Capitalism in here, you encourage everybody to own the capital. Mm-hmm. But in China, the biggest capital owned by state. Of course, you have super rich people there, but still, they don't feel safe. They can be, the things can be devastating to their capital. Mm-hmm. So China, only difference from the West today is their state capitalism. They're not, there's no so-called total free competition, no.
But why keep up the facade of communism? Why do they still,
Well, it's like
what's
England.
the point?
You still have a king and queen, and
Tradition?
It's not tradition. It's just they don't love capitalism. So why they have to change their name? It's like I never changed my passport, even I was being hurt there. But I still a Chinese passport after 30 years or outside of China or 20-some years. It's just to change identity, which have to have a strong reason. Mm-hmm. And I don't trust that reason. So,
what I mean, are there real communist thinkers in China left? I mean, the idea of Marx and other communists was okay. Capitalism will destroy itself at some point.
There's no profound thinking. Those are more philosophical thinking, only by a real thinker but I think basically society is not run by those deep thinkers. They just have their own momentum, their own way. Mm-hmm. And it's a machine designed for the road. So,
how does censorship differ in China compared to the West? Because, like, on paper, in Germany, in the Constitution, it says there's freedom of speech. There is no censorship. But in your book, and when you know your work, of course, there's some kind of, self-imposed censorship. I mean, we talked about, thinking, freeing, speaking freely.
I thought we talked about that issue. Is censorship exists anywhere when there's a power, there's an interest, then there will be censorship. Capitalism and the authoritarian will be the same. It's just different form of censorship.
What's the prevailing topic where you can easily explain it to Germans or to Westerners that there's no real freedom of speech? I mean, what about Israel, Palestine, for example?
Well, those things are very simple. You can just say what is not inferior in talk about. Why is not inferior to talk about? Like Israel-Palestine situation, why people avoid to talk about it? What is behind this kind of regulation or policy from state level to institutions, from media to individuals? What are people scared of?
Blowback.
Yeah, but what really they scared of? Why they have to scared of those things? And then there's a clear image. People are coward, timid, and trying to have some personal interest to be protected, not to be hurt by as an unfavorite individuals in society. So that is that is obvious and very simple. Nobody want to harm themselves, and nobody want to give up this kind of harmonious comfortness.
It's easier to go through life in Germany if you avoid being honest. Let's say about Palestine, about the genocide in Gaza, about German co-responsibility after our horrible past. And instead of facing what we are doing now in helping Israel commit its genocide, it's easier to not talk about it at all and to avoid the facts than to face the facts, because otherwise your life will be stressful.
I think
I can speak as a journalist, for example.
I agree with you. That's the general reality of Germany. But the problem is not Israel and Palestine.
It's one example.
No. I would say when you have this kind of psychological problem, that leaves permanent scar on Germany. Mm-hmm. Because you are never healing from what happened in 1930s, 40s. You're not brave enough to say we are a state which we are all be right side of the history, but rather to say we are trying to hide our opinions to be truthful, then you're on wrong side of history again. Mm-hmm. So that's a problem not with Israel and Gaza, it's really a problem with Germans. And is anybody want to be imagined or being seen as a coward and as someone timid to honestly speak out about the real situation? I feel it's a pretty sad situation.
It is. But why do you think the German society is not brave enough to face?
I don't know. I don't know why. You know.
You have an idea?
I can't tell. I think people are healthy. They go to exercise. They go to gym. They ride bicycles. They stay tall. But why their mind cannot be adjust to the reality and can make a right judgment? I cannot understand it.
I'm trying to find out myself.
Well, maybe we characterized not about what we want, we're characterized by what we are afraid. What really scares us, that is our character.
I mean, you lived in Germany for a few years. Were people afraid of you?
No, nobody afraid of me. I'm just a stupid artist and here and there. No, nobody afraid.
I mean, people canceled your exhibitions, for example. So I guess they were afraid of your unique voice.
No, they're not afraid of my voice. They're afraid of they will lose their business if they show me. They don't care.
They're being selfish when they cancel you.
Yeah, of course. Nobody afraid of someone being hurt. They're only afraid of they lost their opportunity. That's why it's a pity. They made a wrong judgment. They give up something which is right to hide their weakness.
How racist is the German society?
I don't know, because...
what about xenophobia?
I don't know about that. I think German accepted the refugees 1.2 million, which was the biggest act during Merkel's administration. It's very quite encouraging and act, better than most European countries. Some doesn't accept one. Yeah. So I cannot criticize German on that. I think they bear the bigger responsibility for whatever the reason. Yeah.
I mean, that's in the past. That's what we did. On the other hand, ever since the so-called refugee crisis, the German fascists are on the rise.
Why do you call them a fascist?
Let's go right-wingers, right-wing extremists. They want to abolish this kind of society, go back to old times.
Politicians, they are act in asking the favor of support. So that reflects the general condition.
Yes.
They are not just come out a strange idea. They come because they want to be elected. And very often they reflect the general understanding of many others. They represent many others. So normally, the situation can be even worse, right? So,
yes.
But that's why we need the freedom of speech. We just have to get our voice out. And not necessarily our voice is right. So,
I mean, we talked about being brave and being able to think. And many young people, I mean, when I went to school after the reunification, I'm from East Germany, former East Germany, and you grow up with your teachers explaining to you what, the Nazi Empire was, how we destroyed or tried to destroy the world, what Hitler did, what we did to Jewish people, Sinti and Roma. And you grew up with, okay, that's in the past. This was a sick society, and this will never happen again. This must not ever happen again. And nowadays, the strongest party in, when you look at the polls, they're not in the government, but like in the polls, are, of course, they're not Nazis from back then, but it feels like there's not history repeating itself 100 years later in Germany or in Europe. But it kind of seems to rhyme, especially when you look at America with Trump and his right-wing people. Do you have the sense that the history kind of repeats itself? That 100 years later we are at a brink of a war, some kind of revolution?
I think history is not just repeat itself. It's only one history. So all those so-called left or right or against struggle is just in the one history. It's like always have conflicts, always challenge each other. And it's just like that. Anything can happen, of course. It's a human decision. It's made by human.
Anything can happen.
Yes.
But it seems to be like everybody is focusing on the bad version of what could happen. From my point of view, like it's so hard to find people who focus on what could happen in a good way. How we can, we talk about freedom, free ourselves, have a better life, overcome capitalism, all this. Instead, we are focusing on what we are afraid of.
So what are you afraid of?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm afraid of us not seeing what is possible in a good way and going back to the past, as in voting or letting those people in power with the ideas of the past.
I think that talk is too general, and the sense has to be very specific. What is in the past and why that would not work, or you're afraid of. I think the past is also designed by the human beings, right? I mean, they have a strong reason to achieve what they want to achieve.
I think I'm afraid of being even less free in the future than now.
But still,
if we call it
still the definition of the freedom still are not quite clear. You mean what is more free or less free? From very beginning, I said there's no such thing as a freedom unless you put enough struggle. So that means you buy less free. That means you have a less struggle. So I think you just have to put more struggle to achieve your freedom.
Have you personally found the meaning of life?
Meaning of life is come from the discovery. It's we just have to have this kind of wondering why we are here and how we are here and how we become an individual or a life itself, and how we can cope with the situation with others. All those things are so profound and almost unsolvable, so that would keep us busy enough to pass this short a few decades. And we never get a conclusion. There's no absolute answer on where the life is really come from and where we'll end up for. So is that enough for life? Or why we have to seeking for so-called freedom? We do everybody has the freedom to ask those questions.
Sally, we don't have much time left, but are you afraid of dying? Are you afraid of death?
I think we have to celebrate death just like we celebrate living, because death is the conclusion of one sentence, and we don't want to leave a sentence which is just half speaking.
How do you celebrate death?
Celebrate of that as being very calm to receive the last moment.
How do you do that? How do you do that?
Well, you're fortunate, you don't know that, but very often not so fortunate. So, yeah, I think a sudden death could be good.
Sudden death?
Yes, because death come without even conscious. So, sudden death is like a sudden born. We never know we're going to be born. That's just one sperm with one egg, and they just,
Do artists or artists like you, do you feel that you have a responsibility to society?
I feel I have a responsibility only because I'm eating well, I'm dressed okay, but I never really made a fabric. I never really growing anything on the planet, and I think it's not fair for someone produce those, and they have to work hard, and I just speak here, talk empty, and provide some works which been called art and sell extremely expensive, and but mostly only can be selected by the super rich and the so-called culture institutions. Very often they know nothing about art.
Really?
You don't know that? I tell you that.
I didn't know that, no.
This can be a conclusion of the conversation.
They don't know art?
They know nothing about art. They just some kind of cultural bureaucrats.
Do you think they know what the rich, the people who buy the art
they know how to play the game.
What's the game? Selling? Buying and selling? What's the game?
You mean the game for them?
Yes.
Game for them is it's just like any product. It's like people selling perfumes. It's a game, selling cigarettes or liquor, It's all kind of games. So, and the human society needs a game to get high or to do whatever they like to. You can never understand the human behaving. It's such a mystery. I think your time is up.
Yes. Let's conclude with let's try to understand humans. Let's keep trying to understanding. Weiwei, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for playing the game of a public conversation.
Sure.
Thanks for watching, and thanks for helping us play the game of independent journalism by you guys supporting us. No sponsors, no paywall, no merchandise. And that's it. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
So.